I've always said to my men friends, if you care for me, darling, you will give me territory. Give me land. Give me land.
Never has a quote been so profoundly needed to be echoed than the words of ancestor actress Eartha Kitt. Her words presently beckon an urgent need as we endure the final wage of land grabbing in urban communities. Simply put, our neighborhoods are being rebuilt, but they are not being done with us in mind. Since 1910, there has been a severe decline in black land ownership, resulting in urban and rural counties with predominantly black populations becoming pockets of enduring poverty. Let's not play games here. This is by systematic design, one that has been on autopilot since at least the death of Martin Luther King over 50 years ago. The key word I mentioned is autopilot, because our plight exists today no longer because of the crack of a whip, but the mental and cultural amnesia we're still under the influence of that started well before the states of this country were even united. Putting it bluntly, we might not be the root of our condition, but we certainly are helping in holding us at bay. What are the three basic needs of survival? Food, clothing, and shelter. A more appropriate order would be land, food, and shelter, for land is the key element to sustainability. Land is a part of our socio-economic complexity, and denied access to land may be the key element in black economic development. Land has been the cornerstone of civilization since we moved from the phase of hunter-gatherer. For black folk, or people of African descent in the United States, or Pawatas for short, land is a part of our socio-economic complexity. It is the umbilical cord that connects us with nature. I find denied access to land may be a key element in black underdevelopment. This enduring poverty I'm speaking of serves as the elephant in the room, for every one of us knows this, yet treats it as taboo to resolve, much less even speak on it. Pawatas' connection to land is rapidly disappearing, and with it goes the cultural, social, political, and socio-economic capital that once sustained us. History is important, for you either know it and can use it to become better from it, or you repeat it with detrimental effects that can span generations. We must understand we are where we are now because we have yet to collectively learn from history. But today, we change this. Over the next few minutes, I will introduce a synoptic historical overview, summing up with a tangible resolution spread out in 4 5-minute segments. These segments are history, economics, cooperatives, and lastly, Black Land Matters. From this, it is my intent and hoping you'll see the value in using cooperative measures to survive as well as compete in the next 20 years.
Yes, I like the rhymes.
All of us are born with the miraculous ability to determine the direction.
When reviewing the topic of black sustainability, since emancipation, Pawatas, or black folk, has found it a challenge to find and then create sustainable settlements. After emancipation, we found ourselves moving to wherever jobs were. The Great Migration of the early 1900s was due to the end of the Civil War and the birth of the industrialization period. Over 7 million Pawatas fled the South to escape poverty and overt racism. Since emancipation, we have been perpetually migrating, never setting root in any one area. This has been a major factor in the destabilization of our communities, which has opened the door for gentrification in all kinds of forms, mainly covered in Neely Fuller Jr.'s now 10 areas of people activity: economics, education, entertainment, health, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. To Today, we find history is repeating itself, with many Powatas now migrating back to the South, but not because of a job boom, but gentrification in many forms. There are less domestic job opportunities, resulting in many non-landowners migrating and moving around because they simply cannot afford the rent. As individuals, it's an endless maze, with many ending up living in subpar conditions, with the thought of the white picket fence remaining a pipe dream. Ironically, many do end up living with other families, realizing shared finances is a workable and viable as well as sustainable solution. However, the lack of educational awareness about cooperatives keeps many of us in concentration camp mode. Factor in a lack of trust within ourselves further makes for collective hopelessness for better conditions. So we merely end up existing day to day, generation to generation. In 2005, 3 years before the recent recession, the median black household had a net worth of $12,124, far behind the median white household, which had a net worth of $134,992. By the official end of the recession in 2009, our median household net worth had fallen to $5,677, more than 50% lost, while the number for whites was $113,149, just over a 10% loss. Overall, from 2007 to 2010, wealth for Powatas declined by an average of 31%, home equity by an average of 28%, and retirement savings by an average of 35%. In contrast, whites lost 11% in wealth, 24% in home equity, and actually gained 9% in retirement savings. According to a 2013 report by the researchers at Brandeis University, half the collective wealth of African American families was stripped away during the Great Recession. To paraphrase Slate.com's chief political correspondent, Jamel Bowie, if you're familiar with African American history and housing policy, the explicit housing discrimination of the mid-20th century left a mark on the landscape of American home ownership. The combination of redlining, blockbusting, racial covenants, and other discriminatory measures means that even now, a majority of blacks live in neighborhoods with relatively poor access to capital and mortgage loans. According to the 2010 census, 70% of whites own their homes versus renters. Asians are a distant second at 59%. Native Americans and Hispanics follow, and Powatas are last at 46%. For those of us able to save and afford a home, we aren't as financially secure as our white counterparts. The reason? Middle-class Powatas are more likely to belong to the lower middle class of civil servants and government workers, professions that in the last 5 or so years have been slashed as a consequence of mass public sector downsizing. So you see, when it comes to our most fundamental reasons for living, progress we have not yet attained. The solution, however, lies in an understanding of economics.
He asked me to kind of quickly talk about my purpose here for this. Well, what is the purpose of running the biggest, best minority network in technology? Is it like philanthropic? Are you trying to give back? Are you trying to help people? And the answer is no, absolutely not. My purpose, as those of you who were last time know, is I'm going to make $1 billion. And that's why you are all here. But once you go into the consumer business, then all of the sudden, how do consumers make decisions? Well, they make decisions based on their culture. They make decisions based on, where they come from, what they're going to listen to, what they're going to buy, what they're going to do. It's all based in who they are. And if any of you have been, and many of you have been, as I have, around the world, what you find is that culture worldwide, the dominant culture, emanates from the United States. So if you go anywhere in the world, you'll hear music from here, You'll see fashion from here. You'll see a lot of things that you say, wow, I know where that came from. And then if you go back and you say, well, where did the culture in the United States come from? Like, it's predominantly from black people, right? Who invented jazz? Who invented rock and roll? Who invented blues? Who invented hip hop? Who invented most of the fashion? And so when you think about, like, how are you going to drive culture? How are you going to sell technology products to consumers? There's a big opportunity, a big untapped opportunity, and I'm going to tap it and get $1 billion.